Capricorn, take a breath with me for a moment. This message is not coming to you by accident. You didn't walk away because you were weak. You walked away because staying was slowly costing you your soul. And now, something is shifting. A silence you thought would last forever is about to be broken. There is a call coming, not to confuse you, not to pull you backward, but to finally tell the truth that was held back for far too long. Capricorn, if you are ready to receive clarity without losing your power, type "I choose truth" in the comments right now. Because this conversation is only the doorway to a much bigger story. Capricorn, stay with me here, just for a moment longer. Because what I'm about to say is not something you usually let yourself hear. You didn't go quiet because you ran out of love. You went quiet because you ran out of space to keep betraying yourself. And I know how long that took. You don't pull back easily. You don't shut doors in anger. You don't disappear just because things feel heavy. You stay, you adjust, you carry more than your share and tell yourself it's fine. Until one day, your body feels tired before your mind admits the truth. That kind of silence doesn't come from weakness. It comes from someone who has already tried everything else. You replayed the conversations in your head. You measured every word before you stopped saying them. You gave chances quietly, hoping effort would be noticed without needing to be announced. And when nothing changed, you didn't explode. You didn't make a scene. You simply stepped back the way someone does when they finally realize that staying any longer would cost them something they can't afford to lose: their sense of self. And here's the part people rarely understand about you. When Capricorn withdraws, it's not a punishment. It's not manipulation. It's not a test. It's a moment of self-preservation. It's the quiet decision that says, I can still care without continuing to bleed. You didn't leave loudly because you weren't trying to prove a point. You were trying to survive with your dignity intact. And if you're honest, there was sadness in that choice, not relief. A slow sadness, a mature sadness. The kind that comes with knowing you did everything you could before you stopped asking for more. That's why this moment now feels different in your chest. Because when you truly let go, something in the world starts to move. Not fast, not dramatically, but deliberately. As if the energy you were holding up alone is finally being returned to you in a different form. You may not even see it yet. You might only feel it as a subtle shift, a thought that keeps coming back, a memory that doesn't sting as sharply, a sense that something unfinished is quietly rearranging itself. And Capricorn, I want you to notice this. You didn't lose your ground when you chose yourself. You claimed it. Whatever reaches for you now is doing so because you no longer chase, because you no longer explain, because you no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And that changes the way every door opens. Just breathe here for a second, because what's approaching isn't asking you to return to who you were. It's responding to who you've become. Capricorn, let me say this softly. When you stepped back, the world around you did not collapse, but something very specific did. The place you used to stand, holding everything together. And they felt it. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment. It arrived quietly. In the small hours of the night, when there was no one left to distract them. They reached for the familiar and realized it was gone. No steady presence behind them. No calm voice smoothing the edges. No one fixing what they broke before it ever became visible. You had been doing that for so long, they forgot it was happening. And when it stopped, they didn't immediately miss you. They missed the ease, the structure, the way things somehow worked out without them having to grow. That's when the night started to stretch. Sleep became lighter. Thoughts stayed louder. They replayed moments they once rushed past. Conversations they didn't take seriously. The way you paused before speaking, as if you were deciding whether it was worth the energy. Only now they could hear the weight in that silence. This is the part they don't admit out loud. They thought strength meant independence. They thought love would always stay put as long as they didn't completely destroy it. They didn't understand that what you offered was not automatic. It was chosen, every single day. And once that choice was no longer being made, the emptiness had a shape. Your shape. Not the version of you that asked. Not the version that waited. The version that held the line without announcing it. They started asking questions they had avoided for years. Why does everything feel heavier now? Why do I feel exposed? Why does nothing feel anchored anymore? because you were the anchor. And Capricorn, this matters more than you think. Not because it gives you power over them, but because it restores the truth about you. You were never too much. You were too solid, too reliable for someone who hadn't learned how to carry their own weight. And when that reality sets in, it doesn't come with anger. It comes with regret, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't know how to fix itself. That's when the idea of you starts returning without permission, in moments they didn't plan for, while driving, while staring at nothing, while trying to explain themselves to people who don't really know them. They begin to understand that what they lost was not convenience, it was partnership. And partnership requires presence, not performance, not promises, presence. Capricorn. You didn't leave a hole, you revealed one that was already there. And as uncomfortable as that realization is, it's also clarifying, because nothing reaches back toward you now out of comfort. It reaches because something essential is missing. Take a breath here. Feel your feet on the ground. You are not being pulled backward. You are being recognized. And recognition changes the way people approach you. What begins to move toward you now does so with awareness, with hesitation, with humility. And that alone tells you everything about where this is headed, Capricorn. Stay close to this moment with me, because there is something pressing on the air now, something unspoken that has been sitting between you and them for longer than either of you want to admit. You can feel it even if no words have been exchanged. That low pressure in the chest, that sense that something important has been held back, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. They knew. That's the part that matters. They were aware of what they were doing, and also aware of what they were avoiding. And for a long time, they convinced themselves that silence was safer than honesty, safer than risking your reaction, safer than owning the consequences. So they kept moving forward with that truth folded up inside them like a letter never sent. But truth does not disappear just because it is hidden. It gets heavier. It starts to show up in the way someone hesitates before speaking, in the way their eyes drop when a certain subject comes too close, in the tension they carry without knowing how to put it down. Capricorn, you sensed this long before you stepped away. You noticed the pauses, the half-answers, the moments where something real should have been said and wasn't. And even then you didn't demand confession. You gave space, you gave time, you hoped maturity would arrive on its own. But here is the quiet truth. Some people only find their courage when the ground beneath them shifts, when comfort is removed, when the cost of staying silent becomes greater than the fear of speaking. That is where they are now. The weight they've been carrying is no longer abstract. It has a name, your name. Not because you were the problem, but because losing you clarified what the silence was protecting. Their ego, their image, their ability to avoid accountability. And Capricorn, this is where things begin to feel different, because this pressure they are under is not coming from you. It is coming from within them. The realization that if they do nothing, they will watch the door close without ever having told the truth. And that regret is heavier than any admission. So the truth starts pushing upward, not dramatically, not all at once, but persistently. It shows up when they try to distract themselves and can't. When they imagine reaching out and feel both fear and relief in the same breath. Because honesty is terrifying only when someone still matters. Capricorn. This is important for you to hear. Whatever they are holding was never yours to carry. You did not create their silence. You did not cause their hesitation. You simply refused to keep living around what was missing, and that choice forced clarity into the space. Now something inside them understands that truth spoken late is still truth, but truth never spoken becomes a permanent loss. And they are standing right at that edge, feeling the weight of everything they did not say pressing against the moment. Just breathe here. Notice how steady you feel now compared to before, because whatever comes forward next is not here to destabilize you. It is here because you no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And that changes what honesty sounds like when it finally arrives. Capricorn, let me slow this moment down with you, because what is coming toward you does not rush. It doesn't interrupt your life loudly. It approaches the way truth always does when it has waited long enough. Quiet, careful, intentional. This call you feel on the horizon was not triggered by loneliness alone, and it wasn't born from impulse. It formed over time, in the pauses they couldn't escape, in the nights when distraction stopped working, in the moments when pretending became heavier than admitting fault. You see, some conversations don't happen until someone realizes they can no longer carry the version of themselves they've been protecting. This is one of those moments. The words they want to say have been rehearsed silently more times than you know. They started as fragments, unfinished sentences, thoughts quickly pushed aside, but repetition gave them weight, and weight demands release. This is not a call asking you to return to what was. It isn't reaching for the comfort of familiarity. It's reaching for alignment. There's a difference. When the phone finally connects, you'll hear it immediately. Not in what they say first, but in how they breathe before they speak. There's a steadiness there now that wasn't present before. Not confidence, responsibility. The kind that understands words can't undo the past, but honesty can stop it from repeating itself. They are no longer circling the truth, no longer softening it to protect their image, no longer hiding behind explanations that lead nowhere. And Capricorn, this matters because you know the difference between someone who wants relief and someone who wants to be accountable. You've lived that difference. You've been the one who carried weight without recognition, who fixed what you didn't break, who stayed composed while others avoided discomfort. So, when someone finally speaks to you without defensiveness, without shortcuts, without blame, your body recognizes it before your mind catches up. There's a calm that settles in. Not excitement, not relief, clarity. You're not being asked to decide anything. Not in that moment. You're being offered something simpler and far more rare, the truth spoken cleanly. And Capricorn, that is something you've always respected, even when it hurts, even when it comes late. You don't need perfect words. You don't need dramatic apologies. You need alignment between voice and action. That's what this moment is testing. Because once the truth is out in the open, everything changes without anyone forcing it. Illusions fall away, expectations reset, and you can finally see what you are working with. This is not a moment that asks you to soften your boundaries. It asks you to stand inside them, to listen without shrinking, to receive without rescuing. And here's something I want you to hold gently. You did not cause this reckoning. You did not orchestrate this confession. Your absence created space for honesty to grow teeth, for truth to become unavoidable. And whatever follows will not move at your expense, because you are no longer negotiating with uncertainty. You are meeting reality face to face. Take a breath here. Notice how grounded you feel in your own body. That's not coincidence. That's what happens when something arrives at the right time instead of the convenient one. And as the air shifts around you, you may realize this conversation was never meant to pull you backward. It was meant to show you how much you've outgrown what once held you in place. Capricorn, let's stay right here for a moment, because this is where the real shift happens. Not in what they say, but in who you are while you're listening. This time you don't lean forward trying to understand them better. You don't search their words for hidden meanings. You don't rush to fill the silence so they won't feel uncomfortable. You're present, but you're not pulled. And that may be the most powerful change of all. You're hearing them without losing yourself in the sound of their voice. You're receiving the truth without immediately translating it into responsibility. There's a steadiness in you now. You notice it in your breath, in how your shoulders don't tense the way they used to, in how your heart stays open without spilling over. That didn't happen by accident. It came from everything you survived quietly, from every moment you chose growth instead of reaction. You're not cold, you're not distant, you're grounded, and grounded people listen differently. You can hear sincerity without mistaking it for change. You can hear regret without rushing to soothe it. You let the words land exactly where they belong, on them. There's no urge to rescue now, no instinct to manage the outcome, no need to carry the emotional weight of what they're processing. That weight stays where it should, with the person who created it. Capricorn, this is not you becoming less compassionate. This is you becoming more honest with yourself. You learned something important when you walked away. That love without boundaries turns into exhaustion. That support without accountability becomes self-abandonment. And you promised yourself you wouldn't do that again. So you listen with clarity instead of hope. Hope that once blurred your vision. Hope that once convinced you to accept potential instead of reality. Now you let reality speak for itself. And there's a quiet confidence in that. You don't need to say much. Your presence alone sets the tone. It communicates something without ever being spoken. I am here. But I am not here to save you. I am listening. But I am not responsible for your next step. And that message lands deeper than any argument ever could. Because people feel when you are no longer available for the old patterns. They feel it in the way they choose their words more carefully, in the way they hesitate before making promises. They sense that access to you now requires integrity. And Capricorn, this is where discernment lives. Not in judgment, not in distance, but in patience. You're no longer in a hurry to see where this goes. You're no longer afraid of what happens if it doesn't. You trust yourself now. You trust that you'll recognize effort when it's real, that you'll notice consistency without having to look for it. And if it doesn't show up, you know you'll be okay. That knowing changes everything. It gives you the freedom to stay calm, to stay kind, to stay rooted. And as the conversation continues, you may feel something settle inside you. Not certainty, not closure, but readiness. Readiness to let actions speak. Readiness to let time reveal truth. Readiness to allow life to respond to the standards you now live by. There's no rush here. What's meant to align with you will meet you at your pace. And as you sit with that awareness, you might notice how natural it feels to let the moment breathe, to let the future unfold without forcing it. Because for the first time in a long while, you're not listening to decide. You're listening to observe. And that quiet shift is already reshaping what comes next. Capricorn, let this land slowly. Because this is where the air changes, not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way you feel in your chest before you can explain it. Something in them knows now that the old way will not reach you anymore. They can feel it even if you never say a word. The questions they once asked no longer make sense to them. They are not wondering whether you will come back. They are not testing the waters with half promises or emotional gestures meant to soften you. That phase has passed. What replaces it is quieter, heavier. They are beginning to understand that access to you is no longer granted by intention alone. It is earned, and that realization does not arrive comfortably. It asks something of them they have avoided for a long time. Consistency, responsibility. Follow through when no one is watching. You see, when someone truly values you, they stop asking what you will tolerate and start asking what they must become. That shift does not come from fear of losing you. It comes from respect. Respect for the standards you now live by. Because Capricorn, you do not respond to words anymore. You hear them. You acknowledge them. But you wait. You watch how someone moves when the moment has passed, when the conversation is over, when there is nothing to gain immediately. You notice patterns, not promises, and they feel that awareness in you. It makes them pause before speaking too quickly, before offering what they cannot sustain. They realize that you are no longer impressed by effort that appears once and disappears just as easily. You are looking for change that shows up on ordinary days, in habits, in decisions, in how someone treats their own life when you are not there to manage it. This is not you being demanding. This is you being aligned. You've carried enough to know the difference between potential and proof. You've learned that love does not require self-sacrifice to be meaningful, and that lesson reshaped the way you choose. So now when someone looks at you and wonders what it takes to stand beside you, the answer is not emotional performance. It is growth. It is accountability. It is showing up even when it is uncomfortable. In Capricorn, this is where your energy becomes magnetic. Not because you are trying, but because you are no longer available for what drains you. People rise to meet you, or they quietly step away. Either way, you do not have to chase clarity anymore. You live inside it, and something beautiful happens there. The pressure you once felt to make things work dissolves. You no longer feel responsible for guiding someone else into maturity. You allow them the dignity of their own choices. And if they choose growth, you will see it, not in declarations, not in apologies, but in the way their life starts to hold itself together, in the way they no longer lean on you to stabilize what they avoid within themselves. That is when you know, not because you hoped, but because you observed. And as you sit in this awareness, there is no rush in your body, no urgency to decide, no fear of missing out. Just a calm knowing that what belongs with you will move toward you with effort that matches your depth. Let that truth settle. Because when someone understands that being with you requires real change, the path forward becomes clear without you having to explain it. And you may notice how natural it feels to stand right where you are, grounded, self-respecting, open, not waiting, simply allowing life to respond to the standard you now carry without apology. Capricorn, stay with me here, because this moment is often misunderstood. From the outside, it can look like distance, like hesitation, like you're holding back something that could finally move forward. But inside, you know the truth. This is not punishment. You are not closing a door to make someone suffer. You are not withholding yourself to prove a point. What's happening now is quieter than that, more honest. You reached a place where life stopped asking you to carry lessons for other people, and instead asked something very different: to stand still, to observe, to let time reveal what words never could. This isn't about testing them for the sake of control. It's about allowing reality to show its natural shape. Because Capricorn, you've already learned the hard way that potential alone does not build a future. You've seen how effort fades when it isn't rooted in character. You've watched promises rise quickly and dissolve just as fast. So now, you're not asking for more. You're asking for real. And that is the quiet exam no one can cram for. Maturity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic when there's no immediate reward. It stays consistent even when the spotlight is gone. That's what you're watching for. Not perfection, not grand gestures, but patience. The patience to grow without being chased. The patience to change without being praised. The patience to keep choosing integrity when no one is keeping score. And Capricorn, this is where your strength truly shows. You're no longer afraid of what happens if someone doesn't meet you here. You've already walked through loss. You've already survived the silence. You know you will not disappear if this doesn't work out. That knowledge gives you a rare kind of calm. It allows you to wait without tension, to watch without judgment, to let someone reveal themselves without interruption. If they rise, you will feel it, not in a rush of emotion, but in a steady sense of safety. In how effort becomes normal instead of occasional. In how growth continues even when you stop watching. And if they don't, you will feel that too. Not as heartbreak, not as regret, but as clarity. The kind that settles quietly and lets you move on without looking back. That is the gift of this moment. It doesn't trap you in waiting. It frees you from guessing, because either way you remain intact. You don't lose your dignity by giving someone time to show who they are. You don't lose your power by allowing life to answer for them. And that's something you didn't always know. There was a time you believed love meant endurance. That commitment meant carrying more than your share. But now your understanding is deeper. Love that lasts walks at your pace. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to compromise your self-respect. It meets you where you stand. So let this moment breathe, not with anxiety, not with expectation, but with trust. Trust in what you've learned. Trust in who you've become. Whatever continues forward from here will do so because it belongs there, not because you forced it, not because you waited long enough, but because it earned its place beside you. And as that truth settles, you may notice how light your chest feels. Not because a decision has been made, but because for the first time, you no longer feel responsible for making it. Capricorn, let yourself rest inside this moment, because there is a quiet truth settling around you now. Not heavy, not dramatic, just clear. You are no longer moving toward anything out of fear. You are no longer adjusting your pace to keep someone else comfortable. And that may be the most meaningful victory you've had in a long time. You didn't arrive here overnight. It took years of showing up, years of trying to make things work with patience instead of pressure, years of giving the benefit of the doubt, even when your intuition whispered otherwise. So, when you finally stopped chasing, it wasn't because you stopped caring. It was because you learned that love should not feel like pursuit. It should feel like recognition. And that recognition is something you no longer beg for. You stand still now, not because you are unsure, but because you are steady. There is a difference. You don't feel the urge to explain your boundaries anymore. You don't feel the need to convince anyone of your worth. Your presence speaks clearly without raising its voice, and the people who belong with you can hear it. They hear it in the calm way you respond, in the way you don't overextend, in the way you no longer rush to fill empty spaces with effort. That kind of energy doesn't chase, it attracts. Capricorn, you have earned the right to let life come to you. Not because you are waiting, but because you are complete where you stand. Anyone who approaches you now does so with awareness. They understand that you are not an option. You are not a convenience. You are a choice that requires responsibility. And that realization changes the quality of what arrives. It filters out what cannot last. It quiets what is unsure. What remains is what is willing to meet you with honesty in hand and accountability in heart. That is not something you need to pursue. it finds you. Because alignment does not respond to effort alone. It responds to self-respect. And you have built that patiently, brick by brick. There was a time you believed staying strong meant holding everything together, no matter the cost. Now you know better. Strength can also look like stillness, like letting go of control, like trusting that what is meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself again. That understanding has softened something inside you, not into weakness, but into peace. You no longer measure your value by how much you give. You measure it by how true you remain to yourself. And that shift is what makes this moment sacred, because nothing coming towards you now is here to test your endurance. It is here to meet your clarity. That phone call, that conversation, that truth spoken out loud, none of it defines you. It simply reflects you. It reflects the growth that happened quietly when no one was watching. It confirms what you already knew deep down, that choosing yourself was never a mistake. It was the moment everything real was finally allowed to begin. So, let yourself breathe. Let the stillness stay. You don't need to lean forward anymore. You don't need to reach. What belongs with you will recognize where you stand and step closer on its own. And as the night continues, as the world grows quiet around you, you may feel something gentle settle in. Not anticipation, not expectation, just trust. Trust in your timing, trust in your path. Trust in the strength it took to stop chasing and start honoring yourself. That trust is the foundation everything meaningful rests on now. Capricorn, before we part tonight, let me leave you with this. The call you were waiting for was never meant to give you answers. It was meant to remind you how far you've already come. You didn't grow by being chosen. You grew by choosing yourself when it would have been easier to stay the same. And that matters. Because from this place, you don't move out of fear anymore. You move with intention. Whatever reached out to you, whatever truth was finally spoken, it didn't arrive to define your future. It arrived to confirm that your instincts were right, that your silence was wisdom, that your boundaries were love, that your patience was never weakness. Capricorn, you are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where clarity begins. So, tonight, if something in this message resonated with you, I want you to do one simple thing. Leave a comment and write, "I trust myself." Not for anyone else, for you. And if this space feels safe, if this voice feels familiar, go ahead and subscribe. Because this is not just a reading, it's a conversation we're going to keep having. There is more unfolding for you, more truth, more alignment, more strength you haven't had to use yet. This chapter doesn't close here, it settles. And from that stillness, the next message finds its way to you right on time. Until then, take this calm with you, carry it into your choices. Let it guide your steps. You're not chasing anymore, you're being met. And that is where everything real begins.